Hello， 北外学姐 Lola 又回来了。Most of you really want to know how to obtain really good spoken English, so this time I'm gonna talk about that. One of the most frequently asked questions for me is where did you go abroad to study English? You know what? I didn't. And when I first entered middle school, my English teacher asked 2 students for detention because they spoke such bad English, and I was one of them. So today, I'm gonna speak from my personal experience about how to study English well, how to be able to speak good English without having to go abroad. You guys ready? First, let's look at the definition of good spoken English. According to official guidance of IELTS test, they give out speaking test scores based on 4 criteria. The first one is naturally pronunciation, and then there is lexical resource, which has something to do with your vocabulary, and then there is grammatical accuracy and range, and finally, there is fluency and coherence. We usually just focus on the first one and the last one. Actually, it is far more than that. As for pronunciation, I got 2 pieces of really important advice for you. The first one is lay a solid foundation. If you are not satisfied with your pronunciation, you'd better learn phonetics from scratch. I know there are a lot of people who say that you don't have to learn phonetics, they're boring, blah blah blah, but actually, it is the most effective and easiest way for you to correct your pronunciation because there are certain sounds like dark L, they don't actually exist in Chinese. So if you don't know how to place your tongue, you are very likely to make mistakes. So if you really want to make your pronunciation good, you better, learn phonetics. You cannot get very far by just watching other people. So my second advice is to read things out aloud every day. I think that is the most effective method for me because when you read things out aloud, you have a script in front of you, which means you don't have to think about how to organize a sentence. You will fully focus on your pronunciation. Read things out aloud for like 20 minutes, for half a month, you will tell that your pronunciation is getting better. Let's talk about the second part, which is lexical resource. It actually means you have to know how to use a certain range of words to express what you want to express. When you don't have a big enough vocabulary, it is very hard for you to speak good English because your hands are tied, right? So you have to memorize words, like I said in my first video. So if you don't know how to memorize words, check that video out. And now we're gonna talk about how to practice using words. When I was in middle school, every month we're gonna have a speaking test. And in the test, you will get a slip of paper. And on the paper, there are some words that you have to use to organize your language to talk about a certain topic. I think that is brilliant. So let's come to the third part, grammar. Somebody just asked me in the last post whether it is important to learn grammar. And you know what? If it is not important, we'll not be talking about it today. And it will not appear in IELTS official guidance. So it is certainly important, but you don't have to memorize them. Grammar is actually the rules of a language, but they were formed by different groups of people in a very long time. So they were not stipulated by authorities. That means grammar can be understood by everyone. If you just want to buy a grammar book and read about it, go ahead, but be prepared. It can be boring and frustrating and confusing. So I also have grammar courses, but I combine those grammars with really interesting and useful sentences and texts and combine them with movie watching. So this is not an advertisement, so we're not going to talk about it here. My point is that be sure you find a way that can help you persist in grammar learning because it can be boring. After you've found the right systematic learning material, recite a text once a week. You have to do it like you wrote it yourself. Just once a week. Do that for a month and we'll see. Okay, the fourth one has to do with fluency and coherence. Let's talk about fluency first. If you ever watched native speakers' interviews, you will see that they would often hesitate before they say something because we need time to organize a certain idea. It is the same with Chinese. So, speaking fluently doesn't mean that you cannot make stops. Don't panic when you make stops. I don't like this. I mean, it's okay to make stops, but how to put it? You could always use, what's the word? Fillers to fill in those blanks. You know what I mean? That will make your speech feel a lot better. I just used. I mean, you know, how to put it? What's the word? That really makes a difference. Coherence, to me, has two layers of meaning. The first one is that you have to use certain words and phrases to organize your speech and ideas so that it makes sense to other people. So my advice is that every week you find an article or a speech and you outline it. I mean, you put down the points, the main points there, and then you retell it to other people or just to yourself. That will help you learn from the best logical thinking. Coherence, more importantly, also means you don't take giant leaps from certain points to other points. This is a little abstract, so I'm gonna give you an example. I have a debate going on which is meant to help my students get better at logical thinking. We talked about the anti-abortion law, and somebody said women should have the right of abortion because nowadays women have the right to choose what they want to wear, so they should have the right to have an abortion. I mean, this is what I call a giant leap. If it were me, I would probably say, because nowadays we expect a lot more open-mindedness from society, if we are allowed to dress as we like, but we are not allowed to decide whether to give birth, it will cause confusion in society. People often ignore this part. Actually, it is very important, whether when it comes to exams like IELTS or TOEFL, or it is just in your daily life. You have to practice on organizing and conveying an idea better. All the methods I have just shared with you had been verified by myself, and I promise you, none of them would cost you a fortune. None of them would require you to go abroad. So, just get started.